Late light last night in the dorm. We're
Yes,
bringing it in late.
maybe like 11, but I guess then like people went to bed later than usual.
How was it? You guys enjoyed it? Was it ringing?
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
I don't know how brought her campus reps in and her reps brought her friends. So,
Friend is also shluchah. Both
yeah,
shluchah.
yeah, exactly.
Very
Yeah.
nice.
A friend, like, had a cool story. She like went to Miami and then became from, and now she's on campus somewhere in Virginia, I think.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
That's very nice. So we have this book, and then we have the workbook. We did the first page, and we're on page 2. We're doing Derech Mitzvah, the mitzvah of matzah, eating matzah, mitzvah achilas matzah. Good morning. So we'll back up a little bit. We'll start again from the last paragraph. Lahavin. We only had one page yesterday. We'll start from Lahavin. Lahavin, ha'inyan. In order to understand, before that, what he said was the difference between the way we understand matzah, according to Nigla, according to the revealed part of Torah, and the way we understand the mitzvah of matzah, apichsidus. According to both, matzah has to do with strengthening our emunah in Hashem. But the difference is, according to Nigla, matzah is a reminder. When you eat matzah, it reminds us of what happened in Mitzrayim, reminds us of the miracles, and therefore that strengthens our emunah when we remember what happened. According to Chassidus, it's not just a reminder, but the matzah itself it has a spiritual power to it, that by eating matzah, this develops emunah in a person. And that needs to be understood. How is it? And by the way, he gives an introduction that this is not only about matzah, tzugazin. Good morning. It's about all, and we're using this booklet now, Rivka. It's about all mitzvahs, that according to Nigla, mitzvahs are more about reminders or symbols, that they make us aware of something. And according to Chassidus, they're not just reminders and symbols, but they're actual instruments, actual objects, if it's tefillin or mezuzah, that have a spiritual power to it, and they empower us in a very specific way. So lahavin ha'inyan, to understand this better. First, yesh lahagdim tchila. Let's preface. Pirush b'inyan amuna mahi. What is really amuna? Sheina kavana alinyan shakadosh baruch hu mechaya kol olam v'levad. It's not just that Hashem gives life to all the worlds. Kizeh lo yitachem dekreis amuna, because this, in reality, shouldn't be considered amuna. Amuna is something that you don't see with your eyes. So you need amuna to confirm, to believe that this is that way. Ki eini basar gam ken yasig zois. The fact that Hashem gives life to the world is something we can recognize and we could perceive with our eyes of flesh. What does that mean? Even though we can't say we see Hashem giving life to the world, you don't see that with your physical eye. That's not something that can be registered in the physical eye like you see a physical object. But it's as if you're seeing it with your physical eyes. And he gives an example. The example is the nefesh, the neshama, and the body. That you don't need a muna, that you look at a person, and with your physical eyes, you can only see a physical body. You don't see the personality. You don't see the neshama, which is the real person. And that's who the person is. You don't see the person's thought and the person's feelings. You don't see this individual is having all these thoughts and feelings. But you wouldn't call it amuna. I believe with the amuna that there's something there. It's something which you see. You look at a person, you see there's a person there. On the other hand, you can't say that you see that person. I mean, the identity, the neshama, you can't say you see with physical eyes. But the neshama manifests through the body. And therefore, when you look at the body, in a sense, it's as if you're seeing the neshama itself. When he looks at a person and sees how they're alive, the physical body in its own right is no different than anything else that's inanimate. What is the body? Flesh, muscles, bones. These are all things that are no different than any other object that's inanimate. And nevertheless, they're alive. And there's thought, and there's feeling, and there's action. So hareza ki'ilu roya ba'ayin mamish is as if you are seeing this with your eyes, seeing the chayes haruchi hamislabesh b'bsari lachiyosei. The ruch is the chayes that is in the body to give it life. So again, the physical body is not the source of life, but the neshama. The neshama you can't see, but in a sense, the neshama manifests through the body. So by seeing the body alive, it's as if you're seeing the neshama. No one ever saw the actual soul itself, utmunasei, and what it really looks like. No one could describe that. We know what it feels like. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know how it exists. But nevertheless, when you look at a person, you still don't need a muna, you just see it. For my flesh, I see Hashem. So one of the purposes of this booklet is just so that you can see the sources inside. So this is a pasuk in Iyov, and in the booklet it's on page 10. This is a pasuk that's brought down very often in Chassidus. And the word Echzeh, I think it's really an Aramaic word, not Hebrew. In Hebrew, it's Re'iyah, to see, Ro'eh. But Echzeh is more of an Aramaic word, but nevertheless, we find certain Aramaic words in Tanakh. So I see Hashem from my flesh. So just like I see the nefesh, by seeing that my flesh is alive, shuguf katan, kach yira chayes Hashem, amachayes elim shuguf gadol. So he's referring to the world, the universe, as a big body, and every person have a small body. And just like the small body, you look at it, you can see that it's alive, and you see the nefesh through the body. That's how when you look at the universe, which is a big guf, you can see that Hashem is giving it life, just like the neshama gives me life. And he's calling it a big body, shel guf gadol, like it says in Gemara, me'aris l'rakia mahalach tak shana. The Gemara describes the worlds and says that remember we mentioned yesterday that when it talks about this in Chassidus, that there are 7 heavens. What does it mean, 7 heavens? Physically, after a certain distance, that's considered the first heaven. And what is that distance? So the way the Gemara measures the distance is, it's the distance that would take a person to walk for 500 years. The heaven itself, how big is that? The first heaven, 500-year distance. How far is it from the first heaven to the second heaven? 500-year difference. How much how distant, how much space is there in the second heaven itself? 500 years walking. And that's the way it is with every world. So we're talking about something which is huge compared to the body. But nevertheless, the principle of the neshama giving life and seeing the life through the body is the same. So this is the meaning of these words. Mi'ha'aretz l'rakia, from earth to the heaven, mahalech, it's a distance that it takes a person to walk, tov kuf shana, 500 years. V'oivei ha'rakia, the thickness of the rakia, which means how long is the rakia itself, is also 500 years. Ubein rakia, between one heaven to the other heaven, is also 500 years. Sheheim tzad atzmi is gufam, all these heavens and everything we're looking at, that in their own right, they're kamei daimim, no different than anything else that's inanimate. And yet, heim chayim, they're alive. Let's turn the page. V'yesh b'kol echad v'echad, chayis, and each one you see life in a different way. Koyach hatzemech baretz, on the earth you see the life that it produces, things that to grow, trees and produce and all sorts of plants. When you look at the constellations, when you look at the stars, when you look at the whatever it is that's the things that are going on, that are up there, that are constantly moving, the fact that they're moving the whole time, you see chayas. This is Hashem giving it life. And Hashem gives them the power, gives the earth the power to produce new things that grow. He gives the power to the constellations and everything that's up there that's moving and constantly moving. The sun moves around, according to Torah, the sun moves around the earth, and the moon is moving, and all these, everything else that's moving up there. Ein tzarech hamuna klal. For this, you don't really need amun. If you would just look at things objectively, the way it is, you see it. V'gam chasidi u'Yisraelim, those who are considered chassidim of the nations of the world, v'chachameim, and those who are considered their wise people, wise in a good way, masigim, that they can also recognize this. So basically, when we talk that you didn't have a mitzvah to have a munah, what is it? And it's different than what everybody else can recognize without a munah. Just if you approach things logically, what he's basically saying is that it's so logical, so how come not everybody believes? Makes so much sense.
You don't know.
What?
If you don't know what you believe, so you make them.
But if they look and they see, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Just like you look at the body, you see it's alive. Why don't they feel like that about the world? And the answer is the pashtus, even though it makes perfect sense, but you have to nevertheless get over a little hump, a little thing that's blocking. And that is that subconsciously, we call it like a defense mechanism. Subconsciously, if I accept that there's a Hashem that makes everything go, that means He created me, means I'm here for a purpose, that means He's my authority, and that means that I have to live my life in a certain way that should be fulfilling the purpose of why I was created. So subconsciously, if a person doesn't want to have any kind of responsibility, restrictions, any authority on them, so somewhere inside there's something that's not letting me accept it. But if a person would put that to the side and say, objectively speaking, like the story I told you yesterday about the person who was looking at the ink, objectively speaking, would you say that this is something that happened by itself or a person did it? Logically, any person who's an intelligent person would laugh at you if you would say that it happened by chance. That article, I once gave out this article from a science magazine that says that lately science is one of the sources bringing people to God. So they have a line there, where they say it would be like somebody taking green slime and pouring it on the floor, and it should form into one of Shakespeare's writings. Who would accept that? Nobody. And that's just one little area. If you look at the whole world, how much brilliance, how much wisdom there is in the universe. I brought something to show you. It's an interesting thing. I made copies of it. I know it's not a Torah book, but nevertheless, it's very interesting the way the guy brings it out. And I think you can use it sometimes in having conversations with people. This is a copy of a book, which is not a philosophy book. Not a philosophy book. What is it? It's actually a book about dieting.
Oh.
Diet.
Food.
Yeah.
That's like awesome.
It used to be at a certain point, it was very famous. It was called Fit for Life. You see it on top of the page. And he's trying to bring out a point here. And the point is that the body, if you wouldn't abuse it, you would have no problem with weight. Everything would be just perfect. But we mess things up. That's his point. In order to bring out his point, he brings out something really in a very, very powerful way. I'm not going to read every word because most of you read English here, but I underlined certain things. I just want to emphasize it. I'm looking at the bottom of page 19, the first page. The greatest tool of all, the greatest gift is the human body and the immense intelligence that directs it. The human body has to be nature's, not God, nature's finest creation. And you see, after him showing the brilliance in the body, he still maintains this is nature that did it. It is unmatched in power, capacity, and adaptability. The intelligence inherent in our bodies is so vast that it's positively staggering. He goes on. The human heart beats about 100,000 times every 24 hours. Consider the fact that the heart and its pumping system, which scientists have attempted to duplicate without success, pumps 6 quarts of blood through over 96,000 miles of blood vessels. This is equivalent of 6,300 gallons being pumped per day. That is almost 115 million gallons in only 50 years. The 6 quarts of blood are made up of over 24 trillion cells. 7 million new blood cells are produced every second. This pumping system has the capability of working nonstop for decades without skipping a beat. Consider the heat this machine must generate in accomplishing. Yet, it maintains a constant temperature of only 98.6 degrees. The biggest organ of the body, the skin, is made up of over 4 million pores, little holes, that are constantly acting as the cooling system for this machine. The digestive and metabolic system have the remarkable ability to transform the food we eat into healthy food, bone, and cell structure. Perfect balance is always maintained as if it were off. If it was off only by a small fraction, the balance would be destroyed. Next, where it's underlined. The skeletal system works in harmony with an amazing muscular system that allows locomotion. The force and wisdom necessary to turn a fertilized ovum into a fully grown man or woman are beyond our comprehension. The 5 senses alone can stun the intellect. The list of activities performed by your body on a regular basis could fill a book. At the helm of this pinnacle of perfection is the brain, overseeing all these miraculous activities, making sure everything is working with precision that would make the work of a master watchmaker look clumsy. The brain consists of more than 25 billion cells that are the most highly developed of any known. You look at a single cell cannot be seen without a microscope. But what goes on within a cell is astounding. The wisdom, listen to this, the wisdom of a single cell is said to exceed all the accumulated knowledge of the human race to date. Even the smallest cell in your body is about 1 billion times the size of its smallest component. The cell is the size of more chemical reaction than all the chemical factories in the world combined. No one on earth can explain what makes an individual cell operate. In other words, the innate intelligence of the body is infinitely more sophisticated than our thinking minds And to think that there are over 75 trillion of these astounding cells working with pinpoint perfection for some 60, 70, 80 years or more. If you took the DNA from all the genes of your 75 trillion cells, it would fit into a box the size of an ice cube. But if all this DNA were unwound and joined together, the string would stretch from Earth to the sun and back more than 400 times. That's almost 80 billion miles. Turn the page. One human cell in a laboratory, free from all bodily influences, will divide some 50 times before dying. If all our cells divided that often would reach a weight of more than 80 trillion tons. Only with such staggering thoughts as these is it possible to grasp some idea of the infinite intelligence necessary to coordinate the activities of such an astronomical number of cooperating cells. But one of the main things he brings out is your body is performing quadrillions of processes 24 hours a day, not millions or billions or even trillions, but quadrillions. And it's happening not haphazardly, but with pinpoint perfection, carrying on all the metabolic and self-life-stating process of your experience and existence. And they're all coordinated with each other. When we view the vastness of the human body, faculties and processes keep going. We must stand in awe of the enormous intelligence displayed. Whose intelligence? Nature. Why would an intelligent guy like this not say it's got to be a creator who is brilliant to put all this together? And that's it, because the brain doesn't want to accept that there is someone on top of me, and I'm obligated to follow what he says, and he's my boss, and that's question. But if you look at it, like it says here, Chasidim Chachamim, true Chachamim, who are not, their intelligence is not going to be influenced by their personal interest, but they want to look at things in an objective way, in an emissaire way. When you look at the body, you see the greatness of the Creator. So if that's the case, what's unique about the mitzvah of Amunah that was given to you? So that's what he explains now, the next line. The Amunah that was unique for Yidden, Kediksiv, as it says, this is the first of the Aseres HaDibros. Kleimar, Taimen, you should believe b'shleimus mitziyusei. K'mashikosav Ramban Zal, shei mitzvah b'amunah. That this is the mitzvah b'amunah. We'll skip the bracket. He lahamen shemitziyusei is baruch hu ram v'nizgav l'maylam abchinazu shanarayim shemachayas ha'olam. The mitzvah b'amunah is to believe in the greatness of Hashem, in how perfect Hashem is, and how complete Hashem is, that Hashem is infinitely greater than what we understand from his creation. In other words, what this person wrote, which is like he writes, mind, just blows your mind. So from looking at the body and seeing the brilliance of the body, you get an idea of the brilliance of the one who created the body. Let's say the way we'll look at it. But what he's saying is that's something limited. You know Hashem from what he created. Hashem is infinitely greater than the wisdom that he invested in creation. So Amunah is to understand and believe in the greatness of Hashem, how great Hashem is beyond what we could know from creation. So in other words, without Torah, of course you can have Amunah in Hashem, not Amunah, but you see and you can perceive Hashem through creation. You see the world, you see the brilliance, like he writes, and you see how amazing everything is, and you see everything is alive. So from that you see Hashem. But the part of Hashem that's beyond that, you don't see. And for that, that's where you need the Amunah. That Hashem is much more capable, or much more perfect, much more infinite than what we see, which manifests through creation. Is this understood?
Wait, actually, it's just if I understand correctly, it's just having, well, that's having faith that like Shem is so much greater than his creations, we're saying, and not getting stuck that like. Maybe with what we just read that like. The creations are so great, so Hashem is great, but we like the moon has to realize his creations are so much more limited.
There's much more to him than
Yeah.
what we see in creation, right?
Okay.
In fact, one of the questions that they ask, if the Amunah would be just simple, believe that Hashem exists, then there'd be a big question here. How could there be a commandment before you accept the commander? I know that then you don't need a commandment. Commandment means I'm commanding you to believe that I have the right to command you. First, you have to command that I accept the commander. And then there can be commandment, do not steal, keep Shabbos, honor your parents. But a commandment to believe that I'm your commander, on what basis do I have to believe if I didn't accept the commander yet? So it must be that the basis that Hashem exists is already an accepted thing, especially for the Yidden, Sor, Mitzrayim, everything. And the commandment is that you should believe that Hashem is infinitely greater than anything we know in creation.
The first commandment, I know creation,
Right.
that means that I'm here I am, or that means, what does that commandment mean?
Oh, so again, the simple pshat is you should believe that I am your God, and I created heaven and earth, and I took out of it doesn't say those words, but I took out of Mitzrayim. That means I'm the one who creates and is in charge of this world. That's why I was able to take out of Mitzrayim. But what he's saying is, I mean, the question that they ask is if that's the case, how could there be a commandment that we haven't yet? If the commandment is you should accept that there is a commander, then who's commanding me to accept that there is a commander?
So that's understood already, and then the first commandment is really.
Understand the greatness of Hashem. You should know that Hashem is infinite, or more infinite than anything you can imagine, even from looking at creation.
So is that a commandment for everyone? All the things in the world?
No, so he's saying, okay, this is specifically for Yidden. The rest of the world is expected to believe in Hashem just by seeing Hashem manifest through creation. We're expected to believe in Hashem, how much he's greater and infinitely greater than what could be manifested through creation. Like, let me give you an example. Let's say when we learn in another Mamar that Hashem created the world totally different than these 10 spheres, could have created a different kind of world, and a world that was beyond anything we can recognize now. You don't see that through creation. That's Amunah. That Hashem is so infinite that everything that we see as being created is because he chose it, but there's nothing in the world that we say that Hashem is sort of limited by that. A person looks at creation, doesn't see that. They can see that Hashem is the source of Chokhmah, the source of Bina, the source of Das, the source of fire, the source of water, and therefore he's infinitely higher, but he's the source of all these things, and all these things somehow exist within him in a very abstract way. But to believe that it's totally non-existent, and he created everything just because he chose to, that's something which is, you don't see this by looking at creation. And many other things that we say about Hashem. Basically, that Hashem is absolute infinite, the way we know it. But there's more to it. Let's see the words inside. After the bracket. So the Amun is Lahamin, to believe, Shemitziyusa Yizbarach, that Hashem's existence is Ram, V'nizgav, is high and exalted, L'mayla, Mayla, much, much higher, the B'chinazu, from this Sha'anurayim that we see, Shemachayas Olam. We see he creates the world, the B'chinas Koyach HaPoel B'nifel, where he invests the two words, Poel and Nifel. Poel means the one who does the act, the power that does something, and Nifel is the thing that was created. You would say the creator and the creation. So when a person does something, he invests his energy in what he does. An artist who draws a picture invests his energy in the art. A singer who composes a song invests his energy in the song. And actually, If you are perceptive, you look at the art, you can know things about the artist by looking at the art. And if you can analyze the song that the person sings, that'll give you an idea about something about the composer because of the nature of the song. So there's a story with Mazricha Magid that he once saw a keli, saw a vessel. And Mazricha Magid said to the Chassidim that the person who created this vessel was blind on one eye. Brought down in Mamorim, the story, even though Mamorim don't usually bring stories. And what it says in the Maimon was, it wasn't Ruach HaKodesh. The Mazricha Magid had Ruach HaKodesh. He knew what was happening all over the world. But the fact that he said he's blind on one eye was something which he saw, being that a person invests his energy in what he does. So he can tell from the vessel that the person who invested his energy in this vessel is blind. And he could, if you're more perceptive, you can tell not only that he was blind, but he was blind on one eye. So basically, you build something, you invest your energy in it. There's a story with a certain Rebbe, I don't remember at this moment which Rebbe it was, that he was traveling, so he stopped over the house of a certain chassid, and naturally the chassid were happy to give accommodations to the Rebbe, gave him a room and a good bed and everything. He lied down on the bed, oh yeah, I can't sleep on this bed. I did something really terrible with the mattress, but there was nothing wrong, the mattress was perfect. I forgot how it came to it, but he asked the question, when did the carpenter build this bed? So he said, oh, he built it during the 3 weeks. So he said, oh, he probably was very sad, so I can't sleep on such a bed. So he says that this bed was created with sadness. You feel it in what was created. So that's called koyach ha'poel b'nifel. So Hashem is infinitely greater than the koyach that he invested in creation. Then to be more specific, so this kibchina zu, what he invested in creation is bchinas dvar havaya. These are the words of Hashem. We know Hashem created the word through speech. He said, Asara Mamar, the 10 utterances, and that's how he created the world. And Ruach Pivi's bara, and it's from the breath of his mouth. There's a pasuk where it says that a world was created from Hashem's speech and the breath of his mouth. I don't know if I brought the pasuk here, but it's a pasuk. We have it in Tillin, and we say it in davening. Hashem Nasu Ubruach Piv Kol Tzva'am. The world was made by Hashem's words, and with the breath of his mouth, all the heavenly hosts. So basically, Hashem created the world, but what did he invest? His speech. And this part, this aspect of Hashem is called Mamala Kolam, which we know from Basilagani, from other sources, which means it's a more external level of Hashem. To use a marshal of a person, when a person speaks, speech is insignificant compared to thought. Thought is something much more internal, it's much more part of me. And speech is something which is external. In fact, it's separate from me. It goes outside of me. It's something which could be received by another person. And thought is something which is part of me and my experience. However, the thought is also insignificant, legabi haseichel. You can't compare thought to the power of intellect. Thought is just one of the 3 garments that when I understand something, it registers in thought. But thought itself is also a garment, which means it's external compared to the power and the ability to understand logic. And the power to understand logic is also insignificant, legabi atzmis hanefesh. If you compare it to the essence of the soul, which is the source of all the faculties. So he's mentioning sort of 3 levels. Speech is nothing compared to thought. Thought is nothing compared to the power of intellect. The power of intellect is nothing compared to the essence of the neshama. That's why we use this metaphor to describe Hashem's creation through speech, which basically referring to the sphere of Malchus. When Hashem creates the world, it's from and through the sphere of Malchus. And that's Nimshechas Ba'elamis Lachiyesam. This is the aspect of Hashem that's invested in creation, Malchus. Ki ein melech b'lo yam. It's based on a pasuk where it says, I don't know if it's a pasuk, on a quote, ein melech b'lo yam, there's no king without a nation. What does that mean? It's wrote down in Tanya that in the creation, like we're saying, davening in Ashrei, Malchuscha, Malchus, Kol Elamim. Your kingdom is the kingdom of all the world, which means all the world, their source is from Malchus. Malchus is Hashem's speech. But another way of understanding why we say the creation is through Malchus is Hashem created the world because he wanted to. We also always look for reasons why he created. One of the reasons that are given is Hashem wanted to manifest his attribute of Malchus. The attribute of Malchus cannot be manifested unless there is a nation that accepts that person's Malchus. So therefore, Hashem supposedly wanted that Malchus to be manifested. There has to be someone or something outside of Hashem, at least appears that way, and that which is outside of Hashem accepts Hashem's kingdom. Intellect is something which I could experience in my own head. Even emotion is something I can experience within myself. But Malchus is something which I can't experience within myself. Malchus is something that in order to allow it to come out in the open, there has to be a nation that accepts the Melech as a Melech. So therefore Hashem created a world which is separate from him. So on this basis, we say that the source of the world is Sfiras HaMalchus. What? Manifest? Mitgalah. Kadosh Baruch Hu Ratzah legalot et ha'koach HaMalchut shelo. So the only way to reveal his Malchus is there has to be an Am to accept the Melech. Ein Melech below Am. If there's no Am, there's no Melech. So, but it means he created the Am in a way that the Am appears as if they're separate from the Melech, and they accept Hashem as a Melech. No, so we're saying this is the lower level that Hashem invests in creation. So the whole creation comes from the lowest level of Hashem. So if you know Hashem through the creation, what do you know? You know Malchus. But then there's higher than Malchus. There's Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Chesed, and Gvura, and Chokmah, Bina, and Das. All this is not, in a sense, manifested in creation. Because the whole creation comes from Malchus.
So it's not connected to the thing that one time last day that you said that everything that like the most it has Matzah, the most it was like the most it high level. Even in heaven there is no high level, high soul,
What? What?
Like we learned last year like the most like a start like this world is the most high because it has Matzah.
Meaning the lowest comes from the highest.
Yeah.
That's also true. But right now, right now he's explaining why it's the lowest. It's the lowest because it comes from Malchus. And Malchus is the lowest level of Hashem's energy. It's like speech. And speech is much lower than thought. And thought is much lower than intellect. And intellect is much lower than the essence of the nefesh. So basically, if the part of Hashem that's invested in creation is Malchus, that means there's so much more to Hashem that we don't know. And that's where Amunah comes in. Okay, we will stop here. To be continued.
For a non-Jew believing in Hashem, just believing in Hashem, is that considered a woman for them?
He's fulfilling the mitzvah of the seven mitzvahs of Bnei Noach, and that's Amunah. I'm believing in Hashem because even though he's believing in Hashem, in fact, you'll notice he doesn't even say the words. It's totally not Amunah. He says it's not the complete meaning of Amunah because this is something which you could perceive logically. But we see that most people don't perceive it that way. Even this Chacham, who's perceiving all the brilliance of the body, still doesn't get it. So you see, you need Amunah to get it.
There's a lot of people that say like, I believe in like all Yekum, or I believe in Hashem, I just don't believe in mitzvot.
Okay, that's another level, but he believes in Hashem.
But that's considered Emunah. I think that would be less.
It's considered a Buddha, yeah.